It's going to happen quickly because it's 3 weeks from yesterday, that Black Monday. So we'll find out about Ryan Poles, I would think then or the following Tuesday for sure.
Well, I mean, as of right now, the last anybody has addressed that situation, we saw it when they fired Matt Eberflus, and Kevin Warren made it sound like there was going to be no change at that position.
I know, but things do change.
I know, but like right now, that's the last word we've gotten from the president of the organization. Now, whether or not Ryan decides that he wants to maintain his, status as the general manager of the team, maybe it's something that he's rethinking. But
well, how would you bet on it now? You would bet on status quo, like they allow. Now, keep in mind, as I said, 8 in a row is the second longest losing streak in Bears history. They've played football for 105 years. There's been a lot of bad seasons. The longest losing streak is signed by a Ryan Poles team, and that was the carryover from the 2022 team into 2023 that reached 14 games. They were trying to lose there.
Your crucial mistake here is you're trying to make an educated decision.
Okay, but that's what they're supposed to be doing.
But they don't. So, like, when I factor in
are we going
whether
opposite?
Or not, what I'm saying to you is what was the reasonable decision at the end of last year, what they should have done? What should they have done?
There was even more, like, I knew that they should have gotten rid of Eberflus. You knew they should have. Right. You knew it was a great free agency period for coaches. You knew that they should have tied the coach with the quarterback. We all knew, most of us knew that.
What'd they do?
But even then, they had at least a little more momentum going forward. And they played better in the second half. This year, now when you're getting a new coach, you have Ryan Poles entering his lame duck year where you would have to extend him, and you have zero momentum going forward. So
there are two questions here. What would I do? What would I predict they're going to do?
Okay, so give me both of them.
If it was up to me right now, I would wash it clean, and I would finally tie the head coach with a general manager who was on the same timeline. That's what I would do. I don't think that Ryan has been the worst general manager in the history of this organization, but there certainly is a case to be made that they need to pivot and go another direction. So that's what I would do. What I think they're going to do is I think that they are going to move forward with him. That's what I think.
I would bet on that too. Now, again, it's just sometimes we say with our teams they need that, figurative smack in the face to really understand it. Like the more just kind of nuanced it is, the less obvious it is to them. But if, again, so as I was saying, 14-game losing streak under Poles' watch, they were trying to lose. Now, in a year that he's trying to win, they have an 8-game losing streak. That's the second longest losing streak in Bears history. That should grow even longer.
Look,
hold on here 1 second. The Bears haven't won a road game in over a year of November 27th, 2023. The Bears haven't scored a first-half point in the last 3 games of football. They fired their offensive coordinator after 9 games in which Ryan Poles oversaw the search for that. They fired his head coach that he hired and he doubled down on. When that resume is a smack in the face, how could anyone ignore that?
I don't know. Why did the general man or the president of the organization go out on a limb and just basically endorse him at the table when they met the media? I don't know why if there was a chance that you were going to change that situation, why would you even commit to it? Because then people are going to go back and ask Kevin Warren, well, you said 4 weeks ago that Ryan Poles has done a great job. I mean, he went on for several minutes about endorsing Poles when they sat down for that press conference when they fired the coach. So, look, again, would I go forward with status quo? No, absolutely I would not. But will they? I don't know. Is Kevin Warren a man of his word? If he is, then they're going to go forward with the current structure that they have.
Is that being a man of his word, or is that understanding maybe the situation when it comes to hiring a coach in today's landscape?
But why even go there? Why offer that as this is our future?
Why did Kevin Warren even need to speak in that situation?
I 100% agree with you there, too.
Like if the general manager fired the coach, he should have been the one speaking, and there didn't need to be an endorsement made.
And all these reasons are evidence as to why when people ask me, are you confident that they'll finally get it right? And I would say no, because we have a long history of them not getting it right. And it's frustrating and it's disappointing. And sometimes it's infuriating. And other times you feel apathetic. But look, we're reading tea leaves right now, and I guess the one thing that you can bank on more times than not is to expect the unexpected with this franchise.
Like, this is Ryan Poles before the season started around draft time with Pat McAfee. I mean, listen to this.
RG3 comes out. Mm-hmm. You heard it. Yeah. Okay. Don't you think like your particular Bears feels different than maybe the previous Bears? Like, that's how we feel outside looking in. It's like, hey, this is a brand new building almost. Does it feel like that in there? And obviously you weren't there beforehand, but does it feel like you and Eberflus's culture is, because at the end of the last season, right, it feels like, okay, the culture is kind of settling in, team settling in. You guys feel that, obviously?
Yeah, it pisses me off a little bit, to be honest with you, because we were hired to break a cycle. The same thing when I was in Kansas City. Coach Reed, all of us were brought there to break a cycle, and we did. And no one talks about those days anymore. It's all about what they are right now. So I really believe we're about to break this cycle and get this city in a really good situation and win a lot of games. So the past is the past. Like, I don't worry about that at all. It's about where we're going.
Okay. Well, a lot of people had a similar reaction to you.
So that again, when RG3 was ripping the Bears and their history of developing quarterbacks, it pisses Poles off because him and Eberflus are here to break a cycle. They've nearly broken Caleb Williams.
Did you say break or perpetuate?
Yeah, exactly.
They are perpetuating the cycle.
So, and like when you hear that, it sounds so bad in retrospect. And then what made you more angry? If you had no emotion going into last night or watching the game, and you are a fan of Caleb Williams, or you think Caleb Williams can be good, what makes you feel worse? Is it that you drafted Karan Amagaji in the third round, and he's a developmental player?
He's a project.
And in the third round, you shouldn't be drafting projects. You should be drafting more sure things. Or you can accept that they drafted a project, but if he had no training camp and he never took any live reps in training camp, and he's only played in one game this year and quickly got hurt, and he's been on IR, you then ask him to play left tackle on the road in Minnesota?
And then on the first 4th and 1, you actually pitch it to his side?
And then nearly get Caleb killed? Like, what makes you angrier there? What looks worse for Poles? I feel, again, like I found a guy who I thought was my long-term Bears general manager. It's almost like when you start dating a girl and you think you could have found the one that you're going to be with for a long time, and you really believe in them, that they're being truthful and trustworthy, and you find out that they've been cheating on you. That's how I feel, completely duped. I've always been a fan of Poles, but I feel like everything he's been telling you, everything that he's been saying on these shows, they're all hollow, because by his actions, he's done nothing. And everything that he stood for were all just mottos. And none of them have, like, this is yesterday again, and this drives me crazy, and everyone says, I don't buy it when you counter to me and you say, well, Silvy, what do you want him to say in these pregame interviews? I don't want him to go and say that you have a good culture, because you don't. I don't want him to say that you're resilient, because you're not. You could at least say you're working hard to get out of this.
Makes you sound like you lack self-awareness.
It sounds like you don't have a handle on, or you're not a good evaluator on what's really happening, because you've obviously misevaluated your offensive line. You've misevaluated a lot of your team. And when you continue to double down on this resilience and the character of your team, you don't have a handle on little things, even your own locker room. And last year, I gave Meller an example. Whenever he was asked last year about Justin Fields, he was always very, very measured. He would never go over the top, because he knew that Justin wasn't his guy and he would move off from him. But yet he still, it was 24-0 at halftime last week against San Francisco. The week before that, it was 16-0 against Detroit. He has fired his coach because the players rose up and they protested Matt Eberflus. The players have been in a fractured locker room. Courtney has reported that. But yet, here's Ryan Poles yesterday, before the game, telling you about his culture.
Yeah, no one in the building, likes losing. It's not a good feeling. It affects your emotions, and you want to win. You want to get that feeling back. But I'll tell you this, I've talked about this since I've been here. We bring in resilient people. And that's to go through adverse times like we're going through. So that's why the guys have stuck together in the locker room, and they continue to prepare every day the way that they should. Yeah, it's definitely heavy, but we lean on the character of the guys in the locker room, and they've held it together, which has been good. But yeah, we need these days to end where we're winning more football.
You're leaning on the character of the guys in the locker room. The locker room is fractured, as I said. The resilience, you've lost 8 in a row, the second longest losing streak in the history of Bears football. You have the longest history, by the way, as the general manager, too. You haven't won a road game in over a year of football. What are you talking about? The resilience of this football team. You haven't scored a first half point in 3 weeks. This is the least resilient team I've seen. They let one game, the Commanders game, break them. They were 4-2 in that game. You're on the doorstep of going to 5-2. You lost that game, and that one game broke your entire team. Resilient my ass. This guy has no clue. He's not connected to his team whatsoever. He can't evaluate his own locker room. And if you bring him back, as Waddle just said, it's going to be another huge misstep for this franchise.
Do you realize that the Vikings, didn't they hire Kevin O'Connell like 20 days after the Bears hired Matt Eberflus?
Yes. They didn't even interview him.
Since then, the Bears, I believe, what did I say, are 14-34. Do you know what the record of the Vikings is over the course of that same stretch of time under Kevin O'Connell? Take a guess. So it's 48 games.
48 games. So I would say that they are 31 and what is that then? 17?
Got to make sure you could add up the 40.
31 and 17.
Very close. 32-16.
Wow.
32-16.
And think about that. This was supposed to be a rebuild for them.
They were 13-4 in 2022. Last year, remember, what's his face? Cousins got hurt, and they were playing.
So did Justin Jefferson.
Yes, Justin Jefferson only played 10 or 11 games, and they ended up 7-10 last year, and so far this year, they find themselves at 12-2.
With a project at quarterback.
At 32-16 over that stretch. That's a team that's got character and is resilient because they've had to face different situations with their quarterback.
Well, do you feel like if there is a Kevin O'Connell this year, again, it doesn't have to be the ones that we're talking about. While Ben Johnson is getting all the love, while Mike Vrabel is getting all the love, we're not the ones paid to know who the next guy out there is. It Joe Brady, who maybe doesn't get as much pub as the other guys?
How about
Liam Cohen?
DeMeco Ryans 2 years ago took over the Texans, the Houston Texans. I don't know how many people thought, and I know DeMeco had a very good career with the Texans as a player, but I don't know how many people actually thought that was going to be, the success that it has been. So the point I'm making is I don't know who the guy is. Hire the right guy, do the right thing, and get your ass back on track.
So what was the rush, again, to hire Matt Eberflus? When Kevin O'Connell wasn't hired for 21 days or 20 days, why did you first of all, why were you interviewing coaches before you were interviewing general manager candidates?
These are all questions.
When you knew your president was retiring, why not start with hiring a president to then hire the general manager to then hire the coach? What's the hurry?
All questions that don't have good answers.
You wonder why, everyone's like, well, Silvy, why do you want to fire the Ryan Poles? We never have continuity. The reason there's no continuity is because the process is always screwed up.
I think
you were in a rush to hire these guys this time. That's why you're replacing them in 3 years, is not because there's never continuity. It's because you didn't hire right to begin with.
I think the most damning stuff is the following. think we all agreed that this year the most important guy in the building was the quarterback. You drafted him first overall. I think we kind of all agree the second most important guy in the building was the offensive coordinator, right? The guy that's in charge of developing this
You
kid.
had the list. You said that before the season.
Now, the number one, it's time to win, I get it. But in the process, it is job one to make sure you put this young quarterback in a position to develop him as smoothly and as easily as possible. And what you've done, as we all know, is you hired an offensive coordinator, coach and general manager, both on board. They were together on this hire. Both of them were sold. After 20 minutes of the second interview, it was done.
It was done. Had to have him.
So this coordinator is now fired 9 weeks in. So think about the instability that can create with a young quarterback. Then your head coach is fired how many weeks later? 3 weeks later?
Uh-huh.
So now I got another coordinator. I got another head coach. And, oh, by the way, my general manager thought that the best thing to do was to put me behind this offensive line that everyone in the National Football League had questions about. So, again...
And then the other deeper in the weeds part of that is, and we said this in real time, we were against it. I was passionate about this. I did not want to consider Thomas Brown to be a replacement at head coach. I felt like they finally got some positive mojo with Caleb. I believed Caleb was the most important thing in that building. I did not want to rob Peter to pay Paul. Whatever phrase you want to use, cut off your nose to spite your face. I did not want to take him away from that, which I thought was the most important job, to give him a tryout at head coach. He was just the passing game coordinator. He'd barely called plays in the NFL. Why have him run an entire team that was already in a losing situation when you were gaining steam on offense, and now all the traction you built up with him in the few weeks with him as OC is lost?
Yeah, I don't know how much traction there was, but certainly more than there was with Shane Waldron. But at every turn, what you've done, instead of clearing the path, you've put up a roadblock for your young quarterback. And I'm not absolving him of making mistakes that all rookie quarterbacks will make. He's not perfect. He needs to get better in a lot of things as well. But think of the landmines that you have dropped in front of him on a week-by-week basis, knowing that at the start of all this, the most important thing in the 2024 season was to get Caleb pointed in the right direction and develop him. You fired his coordinator, you fired his head coach, and you put him behind an offensive line that has now had him sacked 58 times on pace for 70-some sacks. You could not have been more, made more egregious mistakes in terms of derailing his progress.
It's like you won $1 million and you flushed 900,000 of it down the toilet. That's what you did. Yes, you won the $1 million, but you've lost so much of that credibility. You've done nothing to invest in it.
You've done nothing to make life easier on the most important guy that's been in your building in how many years?
Yeah.
When was the last time this Bears franchise drafted first overall and picked a quarterback that everyone on the planet, not everyone, because there were some that thought that Jaden Daniels was worthy of the first pick, but many thought was the consensus first overall. I mean,
listen to this. This is from Greeny this morning. At least some of the national people are even shining light on how dysfunctional the Bears are.
The Chicago Bears, who have spent a century destroying quarterbacks, have now found the most talented one they've ever had and have done everything in their power. Remember a few years ago when John Mara said of his own quarterback, Daniel Jones, look, we've done everything possible to screw this guy up? Yeah. John Mara can say, at least we're not that. I mean, what the Bears did this year was they kept a coach they should never have kept. They fired their offensive coordinator who had no clue how to develop a young quarterback. They put in place someone who actually seemed to be getting it. And then after like 3 weeks of that, they fired the coach and elevated that one guy who seemed to have created some chemistry with Caleb Williams, so was headed the right way. And they decided, you know what, you go deal with everything else. We won't worry about the only thing left that matters. They've lost 8 straight games. The quarterback is regressing. I'm not kidding.
It's like at every turn you ask them, what decision could you make to make this work out the least possible way? It's like they're like, yeah, let's take that one. Let's take the risky route.
It's the obstacle course filled with pitfalls.
It's It's a really good. It's an obstacle course.
That's all they did with him. 332-3776. So that's why I continue, even though in the moment of watching that game,
I thought we were apathetic today.
I felt numb, but then I keep circling back and getting mad on how they screwed all of this up. And that's how you get fired if you're Ryan Poles after finding the quarterback. Everyone says, well, he's the one guy who found the quarterback. He did everything to screw it up. Like everything in such a short amount of time. 332-3776.